inside me, then you would see the colors when you walk in the room. A bittersweet longing for tenderness that can only come when you're undone. Oh, how it terrifies me. Oh, 'cause in this silence bells are ringing, and there are voices singing your name, your name, your name. And ooh, if I can make you smile, shelter you for just a little while, I'm willing, I'm willing. If you could see inside me, then you would see the magical things that I believe are happening just because I am in love. Oh, how it terrifies me. Oh, 'cause in this silence bells are ringing, and there are voices singing your name, your name, your name. And ooh, if I can make you smile, shelter you for just a little while, I'm willing, I'm willing. In this silence, bells are ringing, and there are voices singing your name, your name, your name. And ooh, if I can make you smile, shelter you for just a little while, I'm willing, I'm willing. If you could see inside me, then you would see the colors when you walk in the room.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Appreciate everybody coming. Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Labor Day. Couple good, most of you know me. I haven't seen any real new faces here. I'd like to ask you to silence your cell phones unless you're law enforcement or medical personnel. I'd ask Maureen to light the candle symbolizing.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's fine. At least I remember to ask somebody to light it, I could forget. Spirit didn't want to kick in. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the first hymn. Dear Father God, we give thanks for this moment in time. Will we feel your silent touch, your love, and your hope as we move through the service today? May each receive according to what they ask. May all be uplifted. Amen. Next portion is the reading by the pastor. I had the privilege yesterday of mowing about 3.5 acres of pasture. And while I was doing it, it took about 2.5 hours to prep the equipment, make sure it was all going to run right to do the job. There's nothing more aggravating than to have it break down on you in the middle of the field in 95-degree sun. And while I was doing that, once you get it all squared away and driving, pretty much all you got to do is just keep it on course. Make sure everything stays on course and the process runs itself. You might have to make a few minor adjustments to the speed of it or the turning of it or something like that, but it pretty much stays on course with a light hand. And what I was thinking about while I was doing that was, a lot of endeavors in life are a lot like that. 90% of how you prepare to do something is how well it goes. It just has a lot to do with the execution of it, how it moves ahead. And just like when I was mowing, you have to make minor adjustments to fine-tune it as the event unfolds. Now, sometimes the preparation can be pretty aggravating. I know, because yesterday, first the battery went bad, so I had to go get a battery and replace it. Then the drive chain didn't want to work right on the mower, so I had to fix that. And the blades were dull, so I had to sharpen them. And it was just one thing right after another. And in between it all, it was my wife's birthday. I got calls from her. She locks her keys in her truck, so I had to go where she was at and unlock the keys on the truck. I got asked to help with a fence job in the middle of it, so I went over to the church and helped them with a fence job. And finally I get back to mowing. So it was a bit of a time, but it just came to me that a lot of life is like that. It's the preparation, the time you take to make sure that you're ready to enter into an event. Now, that doesn't mean an event can't be fruitful if you don't prepare for it, but it's a lot smoother, a lot more enjoyable, and a lot more productive if you do your preparation work. And part of that preparation work is beginning the day with a time of silent contemplation, calming yourself, making sure you're able to deal with things as they unfold as you're getting ready to go forward.
Our service is comprised of 3 parts. The first is the healing meditation, then we have our inspirational lecture, and demonstration of spiritual gifts. So we will begin with the first portion of our service, which is the healing. I would like to ask Lorraine, she is the healer today. Those who would like to receive hands-on healing, when you hear the sound of this chime, that means there is a chair available. You can go ahead and safely on one of the chairs. And those who would like to sit through the meditation, I'll be doing the guided meditation. Get into a comfortable position where there is no tension in your physical body. Take a few deep breaths. Inhale and exhale. Let go of the thoughts that are occupying your mind. Whatever is bothering you, any concerns, any worries that you may be experiencing at this time. With your exhale, just let it go. Breathe it out. As you breathe out, feel your body settling down, calming down. And your mind becoming quiet. Feel all the thoughts diminishing. Feel your mind empty. Bring your focus and your awareness to your breath. Feel the motion of your breath. As it moves in and out while you breathe. Relaxes your body more. Calms your mind. As you follow the motion of your breath, feel it taking you within to a very sacred and peaceful presence. To a very quiet and calm space within your consciousness. Feels very quiet, calm, and soothing. Connect with this peaceful presence that is within. This is the original state of your consciousness. You are meant to be at peace within. Focus on this state of your consciousness and be still. Be still within. As you repeat to yourself quietly, I am at peace within and with my surroundings. I am at peace within and with my surroundings. Feel the peaceful sensations flowing with your breath that is flourishing your entire body, your mind, that has invaded your consciousness and your surrounding. It is in this peacefulness that you experience wholeness. It is in the silentness and the stillness you experience contentment. It is in this quietness that your spirit becomes in commune with God. As you connect to this silence presence, you connect to the voice of God, the inner whisper that speaks through your intuition. The voice of God, the I Am presence. You can hear this inner whisper. The sound of your Creator. God the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, that always speaks through you in quietness and in silence. The voice that seeks the highest good for yourself and others. The voice that empowers you with positive affirmations. The voice that guides you and leads you. And enables you to achieve your highest potentials. Open yourselves up to the presence of God. Engage in this communion with God. Ask, and you shall receive. Ask for the needs that you have in your life. What is it that you like to accomplish? Ask God. And then be quiet and listen. listen to the voice of God. Embrace the sacred union and the communion with your Creator. And know that God is always within you, around you, above you, below you, to your right and to your left, in front of you and behind you. Surrender to the will of God and trust it. Have faith and believe that God is providing you with your needs. Trust. And let your faith guide you, lift you up. Surrender to the will of God. The divine source of all knowing, the universal intelligence, the universal power, the universal mind. You are connected to this higher power and intelligence. And you have the free will. You have the free will to choose. For this power is within you. Activate and unleash this power. And trust with God, all things are possible. As you surrender to the will of God, you feel the presence of God in your heart. God is love, and love is our essence. Connect with your sacred heart and experience God's unconditional love and compassion that is in your heart. Feel God's loving energy flowing through your heart. Feel this energy unfolding through your heart. Feel the warmth and the gentleness. Feel this energy embracing your body, your mind, your spirit. Feel the energy healing you, comforting you. You have the power to heal yourself and others. Just ask God to be in charge of your emotions, your feelings. As you embrace this loving energy, feel your mind and your heart connected. And your thoughts are connected to the mind of God. Feel your body's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual are healed and balanced. They are aligned with your higher self. With your I am presence, to the presence of God. I am whole, I am complete. I am content with who I am, for I am all that I am. Hear the sound of God echo your consciousness. Feel all the vibrations coming down to your physical body. Integrate this wisdom, the vibrations of your higher self, to your physical body, and use it in your physical reality as you act and interact with others. Focus on the perfection of everyone. As you recognize the presence of God within each one. Let this presence dominate your consciousness, your mind, body, and spirit. Be still in this presence. Be still. Feel your breath bringing you back slowly. To your physical awareness. Become aware of your feet, your hands, your physical senses, and awaken to the presence of God. And so it is. Are we all back?
Just wait until the healing finishes.
Still have a healing going on? What a beautiful song, it's just so moving. It's time for our speaker. Our speaker today is Reverend Steve Adkins, the pastor of People's Church of Divine Prophecy. Reverend Steve Adkins is an ordained minister, medium, healer, teacher, and lecturer. He serves as pastor and founder of the People's Church of Divine Prophecy, which meets every Sunday morning right here at 11 o'clock. He has been a spiritual worker for the past 25 years, and he has worked in the UK and USA demonstrating evidential spiritual existence and performing physical healings. besides all this qualification, Reverend Steve is the founder of this church, People's Church of Divine Prophecy. It was his vision to create this sacred space for people like us to come, join, and share our love, heal each other, grow, and develop spiritually. So please help me welcome our pastor, Reverend Steve Adkins.
Thank you, Ashkhen. That song has a real special meaning to me because that heralded my involvement, my conscious involvement in my spiritual development. We're all inspired at all times by God, whether we consciously realize it or not. It's like the force of gravity. Whether you believe that gravity's there or not, you're still going to fall when you trip. And God's power is like that too. It's irresistible, it is constant, and it's always in our lives, whether we consciously acknowledge it or not. That song came to my head when I was in an alcohol detox center, and I had fought them tooth and nail for 2 weeks. It's a 28-day program, and I had gone into a set 6 days a week. You're required to attend these classes. The 7th day, Sunday, you get the day off, but I went in there into this free class just so I could argue with the instructor. And when I got in there, the instructor told me, he said, "Steve, you ought to just get out of that chair and make room for somebody that wants to get sober." He says, "Because you just haven't had enough. You need to go back out there and have a go at it till you've had enough. Because you just haven't had enough, apparently." So I got real angry, and I went back and sat in my bed area, and I was sitting there just fuming. And I started hearing the rhythm to that song. I didn't know what song it was, but I just started hearing that rhythm in my head, and it produced about 60 seconds of complete peace in my life that I had not felt for quite a number of years since I was a kid. And from that moment on, I began to seek that peace again. First it was minutes at a time, then it was hours at a time, and then it was days at a time. And now it's a lot more than it isn't. But that was when I consciously began to become involved in my spiritual walk. And that's something along the lines of what the lecture is going to be about today. Because the way we get out of conscious control with our spiritual life is through the frustrations and the vexations and challenges of everyday life. We find ourselves one moment at a time, 1 hour at a time, getting a little more frustrated and a little more frustrated with life, until all we can think about is the frustrations and the challenges that are before us, instead of the beauty and the privileges that we have. There's a saying that I remember, and it says, "Worry creates a thin stream in the mind. If unchecked, it becomes a raging torrent into which all thought flows." And this is what happens to me when I find myself up against the wall, is it's happened a little at a time, this frustration, that frustration, more and more and more, until I find myself being choked by my own frustrations. This has a lot to do with what's called mental pollution. It comes into our lives digitally through the TV. It comes at us through the media in all fashions, the radio. It comes to us in the form of people speaking to us that we don't know, that we do know, and it's just this constant bombardment of things. An example of this is all the trouble in the Middle East. Everybody is so abhorred by what's going on over there now, and rightfully they should be. But the news flash is it's nothing new. It's been happening over there for thousands of years. It's the way that those tribes interact over there. The difference is it's in our TV and in our living room every moment. Anywhere you turn on a TV, anytime there's a news commentator on, this is what we hear. And while it might not have always been the Jews and the Palestinians, it's always been a conflict of some kind over there. People being massacred, people being murdered. The worst war in recorded history was the Civil War in the United States of America. Americans killing Americans. More people were killed in that war than World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, all put together. And they had primitive weapons in those wars. So it's the mental pollution that's being jammed at us night and day through the TV outlets, through billboards, through private interest groups, just constantly jammed at us all the time. And whether we realize it or not, everything we see and hear has an effect on us. Everything somebody says to us, everything we see, everything we witness has an effect on us, and it goes into the memory banks. The first way to combat this type of pollution from taking control of your life is when you wake up in the morning and something frustrates you that doesn't normally frustrate you. Realize that you're on the edge. Realize that it's time to take action and it's time to start paying attention to your thoughts. That's your first earmark. And what I do is I tell myself, you know, it appears that today's going to be a day where I'm much more easily frustrated than normal. So don't speak when something frustrates you. Wait. Now that's good advice anytime. But when you're in one of those days where the alarm clock frustrates you when it wakes you up, or a dog that you love frustrates you by trying to be nice to you, it's time to check yourself at every turn through the rest of that day. Start checking yourself, start controlling your thoughts, and start watching your actions. You can't control the world around you, but you can control how you interact with it. The next part of it is to take a few moments of silent contemplation before you do anything else that day. Well, if you got to take your ablutions in the bathroom, you want to do that. But before you get active with any event in the day, you want to sit down and just do rhythmic breathing and calm yourself. You want to try to feel the silence of the day before it gets too busy. You want to feel the silence of your mind, because in that silence is where God begins to work with you. God works in the silence, not in the noise and the chatter of the day. So allow yourself to quiet your mind. It doesn't mean you're not going to be frustrated that day, but it means that you have called upon the power of God to be with you that day. And you will find things less frustrating. You will find things more able to be dealt with. When you take that moment in that morning of frustration to just retune that part of your mind. It's almost like we got a split personality. There's us, the physical us, with the instincts, and then there's the spiritual us. And we have to hybrid the two together because both have a necessary place in our lives. You can't force the physical and the emotional into submission in order for the spiritual to ascend. That's a mistaken discipline that people get into a lot of the time. You have to cohabitate the two so that they work together, so that there's peace between your physical mind and your spiritual mind. There has to be a harmony there, an agreement there to work together. Otherwise, they're constantly at odds, constantly arguing with each other in here. And it's not a pleasant way. And I know because I came from being a pure hedonist and hellraiser to being a spiritual person. It took a couple of years of constant effort. But while I was doing it, there was that hedonistic side of me that kept walking around, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, boy, aren't we getting holy now? Or it would say, that didn't work out too well, did it, when I was trying to pursue a spiritual thought. So you battle this part of you until you make peace with it. You can't make it shut up. You can't make it go away, and you can't hold it down and not make it be an active part of your life. Your instincts and your mental mind have a place in this world. God and the Spirit has a place in this world. There's another saying, be careful you don't become so heavenly you're no earthly good. If you walk around saying, God is my protector, I'm going to be just fine, nothing's going to happen to me, I'm not going to have to deal with anything, guess what? You're going to be disappointed. Not that God won't protect you, but if you think that you don't have to deal with stuff, you're mistaken. Life still happens. As a spiritual being, you have an alternate way to view the things that always have happened to you before. They don't stop happening to you. You don't stop having to live life because you become a spiritual person. But you begin to see them in a broader view. You begin to see them in not quite a personal sense. Instead of suddenly becoming the world being against you, you see it as the world is the way it is. And with a spiritual attitude, you can find your way through that without being stopped by it, without being held in place by the events that happen every day in everybody's life. You just don't take quite as big of an exception to it when you look at it through spiritual eyes. One of the biggest obstacles to being connected to the Spirit of God or the infinite Spirit, however you choose to call it, within you, is your interactions with other people. We approach other people sometimes, like when I was in that group recovering from drinking, you're told to make amends to people. Well, you go up to somebody that you might have severely wronged and try to make amends to them, and they don't want to hear it. Unless you have a firm spiritual foundation and realize that their acceptance of it has nothing to do with your act of trying to show compassion and get right with them, then you take it personally again. Just because you have changed, just because you have chosen to change your life, doesn't mean that anybody else has. It doesn't mean the people that you are involved with are ready to acknowledge your spiritual awakening. It doesn't mean that other people are ready to believe that you have had a spiritual awakening if you've been a pretty dastardly person before. All you can do is walk your walk, live your life, and know that it will bear itself out. One of the things with spiritual efforts of helping people is not to expect recognition for it. You help someone, you do something spiritual because it's the right thing to do. Not because anybody's going to notice, not because you're going to get a pat on the back for it. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And that feeds your soul, that feeds your spiritual being when you do things. That's the benefit of it. I remember when I was in this trance group in Arthur Findlay College. They always tend to not let me ask questions because they know me pretty well by now. And one of the tests of a trance medium is to ask them a question that the answer could not be known by the individual themselves, to prove that there's another presence there bringing in higher intelligence. Well, everybody's always asking all these different questions about what's the meaning of life and stuff. And they went all around the room for about an hour, and finally I was the only one left. And my teacher, who was here, Eamon Downey, some of you saw him, he was helping facilitate the group. And he goes, okay, Steve, ask your question. So my question was, if everything we know in spiritualism has come through spirit inspiration. Now, there are written texts about some of those communications. And we know now that a lot of that just isn't true. Because in the 1940s, they used to talk about spirit. Children, one of the things they said was when children went to spirit, they ran around being messengers for other spirits. And they literally thought that there was a realm built out of spirit blocks and spirit houses and spirit clothes and things like this. A duplicate of this world on the spirit side, but ethereal. And most forward-thinking spiritual people know that's not true. And I think that the reason for that was the way people were able to accept it at that time. It keeps them moving forward, keeps them reaching for spiritual vision if you present it in a fashion that they can connect to it. So I asked this trance medium, I said, since most of we know that a lot of that is not true now, I said, tell me something that I have not thought of that will be true for the rest of my life, that will forever guide me in my spiritual path. Dead silence. Everybody, you could have heard a pin drop when I asked that question. And to the trance medium's credit, it gave me an answer that was viable, and it proved that the trance was real. The trance medium said, you only get paid once for a good act, here or hereafter. So decide when you're going to collect. And I thought about that, and I said, that answered every criteria that I put forward. Because, everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to do good here, and it's going to build this spiritual bank for me, and I'm going to be treated better here because of it, or I'm going to get better things happen to me because of it. And when I go to the other side, I'm going to have all this stuff built up for me. Not true, according to the trance medium. You get one for one. So decide when you want to collect. So when you find yourselves dealing with these different things that present themselves, you just have to be honest and straight. You have to ask truthful questions, questions that you really want answers to. And you have to take your time and be connected. But the thing with mental pollution, like I started talking about, is one of the things that's really grossly overlooked. We need to be able to shut off, shut our phones off, shut our TVs off, and be off more than we're on. Because when you're getting all this electronic static in your life, you lose the ability to hear spirit. You lose the ability to be inspired by spirit. Because the brain can only hold one vibration of thought at a time. And everything that comes to you, whether it's spirit or physical, comes through your brain, through the mirror of the mind's eye. If your mind is vibrating at a specific thought rate, nothing else can get in it. There has to be a pause to let something else come in. And psychologists teach that technique to a lot of people. They have the rubber band on the arm to create a pause in the emotional flow, or different things that they teach people to stop their mind from running on automatic. Spiritualists and spiritual teachers have known this for centuries. The mind, you hear this all the time, the mind can only hold one thought at a time. That's not true. It's one vibration of thought. If all you're thinking is fearful thoughts, that's all you're going to be able to think. If you're thinking loving and kind thoughts, that's all you're going to be able to receive at that time. So you have to find that time out, that break, to allow a conscious thought of kindness, of silence, of truth to be put into your mind in the busyness of the day. The other difficulty in today's era with spiritual teachings is there is so much out there. so much out there. There's yogic disciplines, there's spiritualist disciplines, there's metaphysical disciplines, and there's this stuff that people are making up almost on a daily basis. And then they take them all and they hodgepodge them together. And you hear spiritualist terms mixed up with metaphysical terms, mixed up with homemade terms. You have to find out what it is that attracts you. Stay with it, stay focused on it, and stay down that path of development. Each path has its own challenges as you get to a certain plateau. You have to know what you believe in order for God to teach you through your belief. If you don't believe in anything, you're going to fall for most anything. You have to be able to state what you believe. It doesn't have to be a specific religion, but you have to be able to state what your belief system is. The organized religions give you something that you can state. Whether it's spiritualism, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever it is, they have specific statements that you can put into your mind to guide your mind. I'm not advocating that you strictly and religiously follow one of these disciplines, but you have to be able to state how you believe the world works with you and how you believe God works with you in that world. Without that, there is no frame of reference. You're cast about aimlessly from study to study. You never feel like you learn anything, and you're wondering what the real story is. Now, it doesn't mean that if you pick a belief system that you're not going to change to another one later on, because I started off in a subjective form of Christian theology. It held me in good stead to a certain point. Then I changed over to a yogic belief system, and that held me for about 10 years. Now I'm in spiritualism. But you need to find a discipline that you can pursue and progress through, because it has specific challenges at specific points that you have to spiritually overcome. And if you don't believe in that stuff, and you don't have something you believe in, when that challenge comes, you just switch over here to something else that's more agreeable. So whatever you believe you are, stick with it, go through the challenges of it, and when it stops producing harmony and happiness in your life, of a permanent source, not a daily source, but a permanent source of peace, then start looking for something else. And there will be something there presented to you. You're not on your own. There's a whole band of spirit guides with you that produces these things for your life. As you hit one point, they will produce something else for you to see. With all this static that's out there about the spiritual development, I see so many flyers all the time that is really confusing. I mean, people get so technical. And what it is they're trying to produce lifetime students that always come back to them for more instruction. They're not wanting to self-empower you and turn you loose. Things might be a little complicated, but I would liken it to driving a car. Knowing how a combustion engine works doesn't help you drive a car at all. What helps you is knowing the dynamics of the road, knowing the rules of the road, and those are pretty simple compared to all the other stuff that goes on when a car is being driven. That's simple, similar to how spiritual instruction should be. You learn the rules of the road and keep it simple. And simply put, you get as you put out. The golden rule, if you want to put it that way. If you don't like what you're getting, change how you're acting. A lot of simple sayings of that sort. And if it doesn't, if it's a little too complicated for you when you learn the rule, if you believe the rule has truth in it, make it in your own language. I remember when I was going through recovery, people were telling me, pray for somebody when they make you angry. I said, I can't really do that. And then this guy that was a 1%er came up, and those are the people that get violent when they drink, which I was one of those. He said, pray you don't do anything to them. I said, now I can do that. I can definitely do that. And after a year or two of praying, I didn't do anything. I began to pray and see that person and the struggles they were in. I began to see their life and give them their due, that they may be going through things that are unknown to me, and I just happen to be next on their radar. And when you realize things like that, you don't feel the need to confront people. You don't feel the need to be that involved with their attitudes. And again, that's what a spiritual view gives you, is the ability to step back and say that about a person. Obviously, this person's got a lot going on in their life, and I just happen to be the next one on their radar, you know? Spiritual discipline should not be difficult. It should produce love in your life. It should produce a freedom in your life. And it should make you refer to yourself from yourself. It should make you not require somebody else's approval of what you do, because you have God's approval. It should not make you feel the need to be anything that you don't think you should be at the time. It should make you feel comfortable with who you are and where you're at, knowing that you're on a road of progress. And being constantly communicating with God and having God in your life gives you that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there isn't times where you don't revert back to who you naturally are, a human being with instincts. You're going to feel that sting and that momentary anger or fear when somebody does something that you're not prepared for. But when that goes away, you have the spiritual discipline. You have the connection to God to breathe and relax, forgive yourself for being frightened or angry, and move on with your life as a spiritual being. Spiritual studies are all around us. It can also be just in the silence of your own mind. And it's not just to make you a better spiritual person. God cares about you at every moment of your life, no matter what you're doing, where you're at, or what your thoughts are. I remember a few years ago, I went through a heck of a bout with internal bleeding. And I went to specialist after specialist. And they tested me for Crohn's, they tested me for everything under the sun, and everybody kept saying, well, you don't have that, and you don't have that, and you don't have that. And I said, well, Doc, obviously I got a problem here. Well, you don't have this or that, you don't have this or that. Thousands of dollars and all these tests and opinions, and I'm still bleeding. No surgery is going to fix it. So I was sitting there one day after about several months, and this silent little thought came into my mind that said, stop taking ibuprofen. Just the silentest little thought. And it felt so right. It was simple. That's a guideline of spiritual truth. It's simple. And I just knew that it was the right thing to do. And within 2 weeks of stopping taking that stuff, it went away. So God cares about you in the simplest of things. You can hear that in the quiet of your mind when you take the moment to listen. And you will know that it's right when you hear it. It won't have to be, gee, is that right? Well, I don't know. Sometimes it is.